And those real situations are supported by the latest developments from smart partners in what we call smart reading tips for this morning and tomorrow and this afternoon. And so they are not just socks as they come. And they're not also only one particular perspective, because the idea is that there is nobody has a formula already given which others follow. It may be better than others, but it has to be tested. So just to quote a little bit, I won't do that tomorrow morning, President Museveni, when some knows that he was saying that smart partner think that the inception should be a free house of ideas. Free means that not one person, whatever position is, would predominate or would say, this is my thing that's going to follow. We should meet without the pressure of having constituencies. Yeah? You see the problems with other fora, when you go as a delegate to UN or wherever else, you go as part of a constituency. And when you are part of a constituency, you are not free agent. That constituency has some industrialists, scientists, this group, that group, that stops you from being a free thinker. And if you are not a free thinker, you cannot provide a solution to the problem. You need non-partisan position. Non-partisan, it doesn't mean just political, it means that if you are a general, or if you are a science advisor, or if you are a minister or cabinet secretary, within this free think tanking situation, you try as far as possible to put that aside. It is not a consensus building. It is a synchronizing type of, you don't need to agree. In fact, if you agree, that means you didn't stimulate enough. There is enough diversity, both in individuals and in situations. So this is what, among other things, President Museveni, alongside his colleagues, mentioned quite a number of years ago. There are many think tank sessions at the hub. The reason why he suggested a hub in particular is because it's a free, non-partisan place. That's why they wanted smart partners to have a hub. So, President Museveni, His Majesty King President Kikwete, as fellows, they had problems which they brought to the smart partners and think tanked about it. Central bank governors lately started to do that. They had about 2 think tanks here. The Majesty Queen's Mother of Swaziland did that, and so on social issues. So, here we are. But, so that's the name of the game. The smart partners face-to-face this morning, probably we had only one kind of issue probably have time to bring in, but we have all the day to handle it. The smart partnership values alongside ideas, which makes ideas special ideas, because they are built on intellectual equities, come from a collective thing, and that can bring in more collective delivery, more possibility to deliver whatever is happening. The smart partners values are probably the most difficult to discuss about. So I brought in the idea that when we have smart partners face-to-face discussion about these issues, maybe we should introduce this idea of thinking fast as different from thinking slow. Nothing wrong with thinking slow and nothing wrong with thinking fast, but there are two different things. Yeah? Lately, as we mentioned in this room, there are these observations. There is David Kahneman, who, among other things, wrote this, but he took a Nobel Prize for it. He was talking about thinking fast, thinking slow, but he was looking at how human behavior, wherever the humans are humans, how they behave. So, if you say, what are smart partnership values, really? You have an immediate thought about it. And this smart partnership face-to-face, before we get into the think tanking flow, which are focused on specific issues, and which require considered thoughts as different from immediate thoughts. Yeah? The think tanking fast. There is an example that you will see in the program on the agenda. I gave you one example only. I'll give you another one. There is this. Where is the program? There is this question that, for which more or less David Kahneman got his Nobel Prize. He asked, what if a bat and a ball, pick a bat, any bat, and a ball, cost £1.10, George, yeah? The bat cost £1 more than the ball, then how much does the ball cost? Thinking fast. How much? Twice.
5p.
Who said 5p? That's thinking fast and slow at the same time. You see, the immediate reaction is probably 10p. But if you really look a little bit more, go in a more iterative. Welcome, Godfrey.
Thank you.
Yeah, you missed this thinking fast. And this is what is happening in most of the situations when we are taking decisions. Yeah? So, more examples of this would illustrate what is the importance of considered thought. And thought in relation to what you do, as different from instinctual, immediate reaction. Yeah? So, Andrew, do you want to put a little bit about the values? You had a particular dimension you told me. Quick. And then we'll ask 3 people to do a thinking fast. I'm not moderating, I'm just kind of initiating here.
Well, it wasn't. When I first joined the Smart Partnership movement, in which I regard myself as kind of middle-aged now, young to middle-aged, I said we are not sort of bossy or instructive. We don't tell people what they should believe, but we believe in anti-inequity. And then I was thinking, well, should we be against something? Are we anti-intolerance? Then I thought, well, that means we are for tolerance. But then if we are for tolerance, we have no values at all, because it means we accept everything, however bad. So actually, there is a kind of ambiguity about our position. We have strong views, but not extreme views. And when I apply this to what Mohammed asked me to say something about later, the world of media and communications, in terms of openness and closedness, which again is one of Mohammed's favourite themes. I recently had a near nervous breakdown because we had a window change yesterday in front of my desk, so I had to remove all my computer equipment. Psychologically, I felt really cut off. My wife said to me, "We must have this window done, it's rotting away." And I felt destroyed. And then I recalled that 1 month earlier, I had a terrible virus on my computer. And I was saying, "Please cut me off, I don't want to be infected with these things." So in a sense, everything is the other side, the shadow of everything else. Openness and seclusion, security and intrusion, they all go together. So that's what I think. So it's all about trust. And I think one thing that we all feel here, and having been honourably asked to be a director, feel that we have a trust as directors that we do not direct, but we try to embody the best of the movement. So those are my thoughts, the thoughts about uncertainty, ambiguity, and so on.
Long course. Think fast. Value. And smart partnership.
Smart partnership values. I believe in free thought, freedom of expression, trust. I wouldn't put it in the top. I wouldn't emphasize it if I want people to speak freely, because if people speak freely, and that is when you learn a lot. If you sort of like control the way people think, you lose out on a lot. So I think freedom of thought and expression is one of the values that I would promote here.
Yeah. What about the same thing, calmly and being calm or being anxious and emotionally attached to something? How does that affect your thinking?
That's thinking fast.
Yeah.
Instinctual.
Yeah, instinctively. But when you are calm, perhaps you think slow.
Yeah.
And perhaps you think in a better way. You see the whole picture. When you are emotionally attached, perhaps it affects your way of responding.
You see, especially I told him we are just side-tracking, but on reflection I actually see that both are very different in that thinking fast essentially requires putting systems, putting structures, putting a framework so that people are able to move quickly. Without framework, it's actually dangerous to make decisions quickly. Thinking slowly is vital when you want to put the structures. We need to be very careful. You need the system, and you think slowly when you do it. So essentially, the actions you need when you are fast, thinking fast, apply where the systems, where the structures, where the framework. But when you are putting these structures in the system, you need to be careful, you need to think slow. I see the two as applicable.
And the smart partnership value.
The smart partnership value applies
Makes
on
a
both
difference.
sides. When you are doing the framework, you need to understand the smart partnership value input so that we do it carefully. And once we are in it with the framework, then we can move very quickly and we can succeed much faster. Thanks.
Alan?
On the subject of values?
Values, smart partnership values. And think tanking, thinking fast.
Yeah, well, the word that immediately came to my mind was sharing. Because here we share experience, we share values, we share ideas, and also we share the planet. So in fact, we are trying to find the good ways for economic and social transformation with the planet in mind, and the planet which we share. So sharing, I think, is an important value of the smart partnership movement.
Is that a value or is it trust which is implied?
It's a value because not anybody is able to share. Sometimes, you know. So I think it's a value.
Beren, one more from the Mountain Kingdom. Quick. Values in the Mountain Kingdom.
Well, I can't come up with one immediately. Thank you, but maybe later.
Okay. DPM, smart partnership values, are different from any other values. Are there any other values which are different from smart partnership, or would you say there is value and trust? It needs to be smart partnership.
Well,
and thinking fast and thinking slow.
yeah, I wanted rather to just be thinking fast and thinking slow. I would have thought about
To think fast.
different way of saying it.
Yes.
Thinking fast to me is the first thought that comes. of your mind when you want to do something. And the immediate thought is not always not always reflect the reality and the deep insight of what you want to do. Thinking slow is not really slow.
No, that's
It is an issue of looking carefully into the inside of the implications of trying to implement something. So you study more and look more into the idea to discover and to realize what is practical and what is not practical. Now, that thought that we think is slow thinking is really a way of studying the implications around the issue that you want to carry out. Now, values, yes, smart partnership value. I will agree that the most important smart partnership value is really the understanding of sharing ideas, the understanding of learning from others, the understanding of appreciate how others think and what others are saying, and indeed the understanding of trying to make sure that specifically governments and institutions, that when you implement a program, you are carrying other ideas with and other people with. So inclusiveness is important in that.
That is excellent, Omar, and that probably will. Did we already? We didn't start live webcast. We can't keep them too long, yeah.
Human being is basically an animal, but a thinking animal. Thinking fast is an animal reaction, reflex action, fight or flight. But then, but you have to come back to the thinking animal, which is the reflection on whether you are doing is correct or not. Your first reaction to something may be to kill, but then your thinking thing will come back and rationalize, no, you don't kill. So this is to me the difference between thinking fast and thinking.
But would it be, Omar, that you don't kill because if you kill, then you don't have. So there is a win-win there. That's why there's an inclusivity. That's why they did the answer.
That's the basic thing. And now on smart partnership, this is where Mahela said we don't have to agree with any set value. I disagree with her about this because when she talked about smart partnership, she always talked about limitless opportunity. To me, limitless opportunity is the result of smart partnership. So I talk about smart partnership, what is limitless, and then the result will be limitless. That's why I disagree with her on this argumentation.
That is by the way of we don't need to agree with each other, otherwise we'll be not here.
We can
so
share disagreements.
Synchronizing rather than agreeing with each other. I suppose we would, should we go back to smart partners face to face if you want to do justice to this a little bit more in the afternoon, because we didn't have 3/4 of an hour. So there are the think tankers virtual from already waiting for the live webcast. So are we starting the live webcast now? Fine. Okay. The first think tanking flow, which is related to inclusivity, the smart partnership type of inclusivity, is around this notion which emerged from dialogue in Dar es Salaam, that for nations, smart nations actually, not to fail, there is a particular, we call it algorithm, and Harry will tell us what is an algorithm. He's a mathematician. It's an algorithm, a smart partnership algorithm, not a formula, not a recipe, but which could be tested and which emerged not from anywhere except from within the movement on how nations could succeed rather than fail. And I said could, not that will. So to lead, there are no moderators, to lead the discussion and to end under any missing issues will be John and Ashok. John is there and Ashok is here. You say why they are not in one place? I think there will be reasons. If you see it fast, you'll see why. And why they are not the called moderators, or why those who follow them, they were identified to stimulate. They are not called interveners, but they are not very far from here. Ellie, Joe, Jack, and all the smart partners. So there are not question and answer to them. They are just thinking slow. Thinking slow, considered thought. So John, Ashok, the first session is about a little bit about this algorithm, but it's a little bit about the vision. The first, Henry, what is an algorithm? Okay, then let me tell you. An algorithm, there is actually a reading tip, so I won't go into that. But an algorithm, we use algorithm because there is an abstract, not model and not numbers, but an abstract description of how it could be done something. And the algorithm actually comes from, its genesis is from Arabs. There was somebody called Al-Karam. Translated in Greek was algorithmus. So since then, the reason why they picked up this abstract nature and numbers is because they were not allowed, as the Greeks did before, to follow icons and other things. So since then, the word algorithm evolved in a way that right now, as more than the supercomputer chap knows, there are algorithms everywhere. But what we're talking about is this algorithm of a process within a country, in a nation specific. So on how nations could succeed. So John, Ashok, who wants to, and you come here if you want, those who want to speak to be more forceful or otherwise, or to are too short, as you come along, just come here at the flag. Ashok.
John, did you start?
I can start, I don't mind. In the deep end as always. Good morning everybody, welcome.
And good morning to the viewers.
And to the viewers, welcome. As always, Michaela bats us into the deep end. And I'm just thinking about this point about think fast and think slow. There are some old proverbs. He who hesitates is lost. Or think before you leap. One is fast and the other is slow. Today we'll be trying to do a bit of both. But we're really going to be talking about the Smart Partnership movement and some insights as to what it is that is a bit different in the way we try to do it in the Smart Partnership at CPTM and within the movement. Beyond what the countries and the organizations develop themselves as their way forward. We see the way forward in many countries, 2020, 2015, 2030. What's interesting, incidentally, is you see countries that have had, let's say, 2015 as their target date, suddenly changing the date because they realize as they went along the path that, whoops, perhaps the path wasn't such a good one, or perhaps it needs an ending. And that's where I think one has this insight that Henry was talking about a little earlier. You who were not on the connection at that time didn't hear what Henry was saying, is that you can do quick thinking when you are within a structure. But you need to build a structure first. Otherwise, you can get lost very easily. I think that's a reasonable paraphrasing on it. And it's the slow thinking that sets that structure. And whenever you have a long-term vision for a country or a company, I've never tried to run a country without trying to push them a bit to one side or another when they've done things poorly in my view. But I've tried to do it for companies, and it's very, very difficult, as everybody knows, to say we're going to go there and we're going to do it in this manner, because if you go, all sorts of things change. And now we're in a period of even quicker change. For those who thought it would slow down, it won't. It's getting quicker. And so we're having to think outside of the box. The other point is, and you see it with this cell phone revolution, you could sit down and produce a plan for a country, an organization, in your own silo. You might have to look at your neighbors to see how it would impact or how they would impact on you. And this would apply to countries. Today, everybody has access through a cell phone, through a new smart system that takes them out of the box in which they're operating or in which you're operating, and which makes them much more able to evaluate what's going on in their own environment.
John, why is a smart system?
Well, what you've got to try and do is to try and think ahead while taking account of what's happening at the moment. It's extraordinarily difficult to do that because we keep making mistakes, but that's the human animal and the human intellect. Now, I'm not going to try and tell you how to think out of the box, but what I am going to say is how to think out of the silos and how to understand how that dynamic flips between the silos. And incidentally, we may be in the current silo, but there's another one happening. Michaela was talking about virtual manufacturing. It's not virtual manufacturing, it's 3D manufacturing. It is going to be the new manufacturing. When cars were first developed, they used to have somebody walking in front waving a flag to warn the people to get out of the way. They were going so fast at 3 miles an hour. There's no car that can go 3 miles an hour anymore, 3 kilometers an hour. They go much faster, so we all think at a different speed. And that's what's happening in the world. So, Ashok, I don't know if you'd like to take it from there or kick me back onto the facts.
No, I think I'll start off from what has been said in the morning. It was not here. Hello, everybody. I would start by asking myself the question, which before coming here I asked, and I share my understanding of the answer. Question was simple. When I have the PowerPoint, that will help me. If I use. No PowerPoint? Okay, the first question was, everybody asks me, we know that CPTM is about sharing of ideas and networking of people. That's understood. But then, what is this think tanking? So I thought that maybe think tanking is essentially saying that what is the outcome of this sharing and networking? The outcome is very interesting. Of course, there are vision documents, there are hubs being set up and so on. These are the physical manifestations. But I think I understand that the outcome is essentially one, that there is a network of people. And number two, very importantly, it's a self-organizing network. There are no fixed rules and regulations. It's not static, it just grows. And these two outcomes really do nothing. And if I see the vision document, it's not the document, but it has been the process of networking. It's a self-organized way in which a common vision, a common knowledge is created. So this commonality of knowledge is not intellectual knowledge, it's not proprietary knowledge, it's not even all the time documented knowledge. It's what is known as common knowledge. It's something like what we say commons in nature, natural resources, except that this common knowledge that is being generated by the network grows more by sharing. It's not subtractive. You are not, when you take out some knowledge of this common pool that we generate, the network generates, it grows. So it's a growing knowledge. And it's a growing knowledge where we don't know what the end is. We don't redefine the end, that this knowledge will lead you to there. In a sense, it's neither slow nor fast, but it's an evolving process. It's an evolving process. Sometimes it goes fast, sometimes it goes slow, but it evolves. The second point about the self-organizing system is, so knowledge is a very unique kind of knowledge, and I don't think any other network can create this kind of knowledge. And I think dialogues are part of this unique common knowledge that is being created. The other part is that this use of this common tool is totally contextual. Nobody can say where and how, it cannot be prejudged. And since we are all, as Omar always says, practitioners, we belong to certain organizations, we do some work, so we individuals derive this knowledge from the pool in the context in which she is working. So that's very interesting. And it's not an abstract knowledge, but it's the abstract process which allows you to create a common knowledge, which then individual uses. That's a fascinating, it's a beautiful thing. It is just funny. And to that extent, I think the vision, to me, are not documents. The visions are evidence that this process of networking, self-organizing, and creation of common knowledge works. It's an evidence of that. What is the outcome? Outcome are the visions. So visions are the outcome of this working of this process of self-organizing and common knowledge at a national level. It's inclusive, obviously, because it's a common knowledge. The common goal is inclusive. The other issue is the transformation. To me, transformation is a consequence of this unique kind of network and common knowledge. Because it's self-organizing, it has its own way of transforming itself. And once contextualized, it transforms the context in which it is used. So to me, the algorithm that we are trying to generate, or I understand, is precisely this. That so long as we are conscious that these two qualities, special qualities of network, special qualities of common knowledge, are strengthened, transformation will happen. And the self-organizing system picks up signals from the surroundings. And the new areas that we talk, whether it's flexible manufacturing, whether it's whatever, nanotechnology and so on, are enabling the self-organization to pick up signals of the future. They are not targets. I think they are, to me, one makes a difference between what Henry was saying, system and then targets. I think smart partnership set up a system. targets for the smart partnership are common knowledge, self-organizing. So long as those two features are retained, highlighted, that is the target. But the target of 2020 or 2030 are the pragmatic targets, which are contextualized. And when we say financial inclusion, when we say quality and standards, and when we say innovation, technology, these are areas in which if we to try out these processes of networking and creating common goals. These are not targets of smart partnership. These are conduits around which we evolve the network and the common goals. If I'm able to understand. I think I'm more confused than I thought. I start with.
Let me confuse you a little more.
May I just bring us back to the subject? The subject is national visions,
Yes.
Right.
aspirations and transformations, new insights.
Yes.
How do nations succeed rather than fail? And perhaps we need to start talking about that. That's your aim, that's the intent today. And I'd like to throw that open. I'm not going to try and lead this. But throw this open and ask for some input here.
Before going into that interesting topic, thinking flow of products are so clearly explained. I picked up one term, outcome. I am an engineer and I know about inputs and outputs. So there is the output and the outcome. Let's separate the two concepts. If we are preparing a vision, the process whereby smart partners come in to prepare the vision, that's the output. Now, implementing that vision, what is the effect of that is the outcome. So the outcome is a bit more important, as it were, than the output. The output, you can put it in a file or in the shelf and say, right, we have done something worthwhile. But then if you implement it, and then there is a process of transformation, that's where the outcome comes in. Thank you.
Just, there are many dimensions about visions, but the one that Ashok was bringing in, where he said he needs further think tanking, because he said he's confused. He wasn't confused, but he was confused to go further. So there was the idea that if we continue to focus on this why nations fail, where the only reason why, the concluding, not that it's the masterpiece, but the conclusion of that thing was that there is this lack of institutional framework which can bring in all the self-organized. And the question he said, why he said he's confused, is if human behavior, wherever it is kind of, if there is a win-win, there is a self-organized way of doing things, either because I need food or because of whatever reason, and we get together to get more food. Is an institutional framework or a governance which can support that thing. And we are saying that this is what in the last so many years, all the government structure or governance structures are usually so solid and so much behind the people's aspirations that the only thing to do, we do need a structure that is government, law, anything else. But those structures, if you look at the self-organized behavior of individuals to make the best of what they can bring, they need to adapt all the time. Yeah? So we're talking about visions in that context. And I wanted to tell you that I have a problem, a confusion. If you look at technology, and defined in broader sense. That is science, that is application, that is not specifically 3D printing or supercomputer or anything. You see, nowadays, and nowadays means different time scale. If a Vision 2020 in Malaysia, or 2016 even more, and I'm giving example because we have people here who are working on that, had some aspiration built into a Vision 2016 about 20 years ago. The aspiration of individuals, in about 5 years at least, those aspirations moved on. Never mind by 2016, where they would have moved on even much more. So by the time, by the way of outcomes and all the rest of it, how you measure that vision, by the time you reach 2016, if you still look at the aspiration which has been built 20 years ago, people will be dissatisfied because that vision is well behind. It's not the vision, it's the aspiration. So that is where these networks makes aspirations ongoingly going ahead with, particularly technology pervasiveness in everything we do. Yeah? But this is a question mark. If, for instance, in 2016, Botswana vision, there are new aspirations for the next 20 years or whatever, and the people at the same time, they want to evaluate what they have done by 2016 since the last 20 years. Would they evaluate the aspirations they had 2016, 20 years ago? Or would they have their ability? And they have done instinctively, I'm showing for Flupo and Lekoma and those from Botswana, instinctively what they've done, they stimulated networks and groups of people all over the country. Yes, there was a document, but the aspiration was quite alive and they went updated as far as they could. Yeah? But there is a question mark there for any visions that, processes that are prone to be, the aspiration prone to be, have to be kept alive with the technology. I understand, and we'll see in the afternoon, that for instance, legal frameworks to do with public security don't exist anywhere. And the reason why they don't exist, not because they are not lawyers and judges like Dion is here, well qualified to do that, but because every 6 months they need to be redrafted because of technology. So the aspirations, so that's a question mark. Now, there are patterns and there are forms and shapes probably we want to look at. I don't know if Joe and Ellie want to go a little bit more kind of
yes.
Before we go into what? Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Mihaela. Morning, everybody. Well, first of all, I'm thinking of this question of thinking slow, thinking fast. Unfortunately, well, I don't know if I should need to go into details about it, but the point is, when you say think fast, it's of course you think that it can be instinct or intuition. And then thinking slow is solved by putting in place the methodology, a way of realizing an objective. So I'll put this aside, but I'll go back to the main questions that was reminded us by our friend John. Why nations fail? Nations fail. Because we've been talking of aspirations. Of course, today we know and look at the world is moving in a direction where everybody all over the world are looking for the same thing. They want security, food security. They need a home. They need a job. It's the same aspirations all over the world. But then when we think of ideas, we are not short of ideas. For example, here we have an institution like the CPTM, which is very interesting because we have people from different parts of the world and we from different backgrounds and bring in our ideas and we build something is being created. And then what happens is each one of us, when we go back to our own work or creation, then we try to sort of use what we have learned and, in order to improve our work and try to improve the conditions of other peoples in the world. Now, why nation phase? There is something very interesting because we're talking of Vision 2030 or 2020, but now that I am with the African Union, we're talking of Vision 2063, which takes us well beyond what you're thinking of now, because in 50 years' time, what's going to happen? Because I was lucky enough to listen to the Secretary for the African Commission, who outlined what he thought would be happening within the next 50 years. And he had tranche of decades, each decade, what's going to happen in the world, what's going to happen in each African country, and it is very interesting and challenging. And this indeed helps me because from what I learned here, and I put this in context when I'm over there, I sort of try to understand what's really going on. Now, the interesting thing is one of the problems identified by the African nations, especially by the work of the APRM, is what they term the hegemonic presidencies in Africa. The hegemonic presidency, the presidency that is crony, neo-patrimonial, and predatory. They are the big obstacles. They were the big obstacles because now there is a new mindset in Africa. There is this African Renaissance where people are trying to do away with all those past practices. There is a new mindset. There is a new really desire to change the world. It's really different. And the job of the APRM is precisely to try to change all this. And through the APRM now, there's a team that goes to different countries, with the heads of state and the members of government, to try to understand what are their real problems. And here I will make a sort of comparison between APRM and CPTM. CPTM, of course, we have all the ideas. We have access to all sorts of information. What is very interesting is when we hire us and all these extracts from papers or books to read. It's extremely exciting, mind-boggling sometimes. But there, on the other hand, in APRM, here it's more structured. Here, when the team goes to a country, we try, first of all, to set up a national governance commission. The purpose of which is to identify the problems in the country from different people, from different stakeholders, for all the stakeholders in the community. That is perhaps from 20 stakeholders or 20 NGOs. And then from there, from what they say, we try to bring answers, bring solutions, and then we come up. I am not going to attend to this process, but simply to say that one of the things that has been identified as an obstacle to progress and development is precisely this hegemonic practice. So now what we're trying to do, we want to have democratic governance. You see, while here we are looking at just one aspect of governance, we'll be talking all the time of sort of governance generally. But here at the APRM, they break this question of governance into 4 sectors. You have the democracy and political governance, and then you have the governance of institutions of the private sector, then economic governance, and social governance. This has more to do with uplifting the living standards of people.
Do you have also networks under that governance?
Not like we have here. But the point is, in the end, where you have a different national commissions in different countries, they tend to talk. They talk. And then the experience acquired in one place is taken to the other place. And in fact, I'll leave with you some of these pages about the realizations of this of EPRM. Practically, indeed, you're right to remind me of this. So when the work has been done, there is exchange communication of the work done by each country, and this is an enrichment for the others who are not yet in the process of peer review. So this is quite interesting. So in other words, what they have put in place is transformative governance. This is the new word. It's a transformative governance. That is, you have transformation and governance at the same time. So I think this is what I have to say for the moment. Thank you.
Is that by the way of Vision 2030?
By that vision?
By the way of a vision process.
Yes, in a way. 2063, the vision is 2063. This is the vision which...
Can you still visualize that vision? We are in 2063.
No, this is what I'm saying. The Secretary General, you see, has try to explain what's going to happen in each decade. Of course, we cannot, otherwise if you really knew what's going to happen tomorrow, but this is impossible. But
There
nonetheless,
is a reason why I'm dragging that.
yes.
Because the other day I've been somewhere where, you know, in Scotland, I did send you something about, in Scotland in Britain, I think those who are born here will say much more about the new referendum next year in 2014 in relation to Scotland. You're a Scot, Alan, isn't it? Besides
50%.
Scotland wants to separate from Great Britain, and there will be a real referendum next year. So about a few weeks ago, I went to a festival, literature and so on, and there was a group from Scotland which presented what they launched just a few weeks before, a tapestry, yeah, some carpets. And that was the reason why that was done for about 3 years in advance of this referendum, is for the reason that you cannot quite visualize what is a referendum. It's an artifact. Like the governance you said, you can't see it. And the person who led the whole idea, probably you know of him, Alexander McCall Smith, is the one DPM. I don't know if you see movies. Do you see movies?
Yeah.
You have time, right? I don't know if you see this lady's detective, Umpo, and we were talking about it. But he was brought up in Botswana, then he lately came back to Edinburgh. So he told his Scottish people, look, in Africa where I come from, brought up, people need to see, to touch. We need to do a carpet, to weave something together. Because Scotland is a long history. We don't quite know where to pick up. But if we bring lots of people together, no governance. The governance comes next year when the referendum takes place. So they did do, with about 10,000 people, a big carpet, a tapestry, which they weave together, and they launched it in advance. They didn't make a statement, they didn't write a manifesto, they didn't write a vision. But it's very clearly that they want to be part of the UK. But not because anybody said, and it's very clear how they will vote, most likely. You never know what I'm
But
saying.
Mihaela,
So
I don't know on this.
tapestry.
Yes, okay, tapestry. But
Are you doing the tapestry for Africa?
precisely, I sent you a paper last time on touching on this. At the same time, what we look at what is going on. At the same time, there is a sort of the grouping together of nation states to protect their material and vital interests and all that. But at the same time, within those nation states, you have small groups, linguistic groups, cultural groups that want their identities to be recognized. And which is why they ask for this sort of, we can for today look like a separation. But you see, it's a weaving of cultural carpets together. But at the same time, all these cultural carpets will not be able to survive outside a bigger framework. So this is what is happening now today. Thank you.
Trust. Yeah. Near Ashok. Do you want to go?
Oh, okay. Thank you, Mihaela. I just felt I wanted to say something as well. Just the discussion that was being made here. It's my first time here in the hub. And
virtually,
yeah. And
we hijacked him. Even I. He is Eve's boss. Eve is the chief executive of Standards. He's the chairman, and he wanted to see where does Eve disappears from time to time. But we were in Petersburg at the ISO General Assembly. So.
Yes. Okay, thanks. First, I'm happy that trust, which is by name, is probably one of the values that is coming out.
How come you call trust?
I don't know, but it's good that it's one of the values that is coming out here. But I wanted to say about thinking fast and thinking slow. In my view, thinking fast is in the short term. it leads to short-term solutions. Whereas thinking slow is more in the long-term realm, which takes you, forward into the long-term future, which deals with issues of sustainability and issues of transformation. And when you think about that as well, you need to end up with this question where, like for example, Africa is talking about Vision 2063, and there's this issue of when you make your vision, are you able to see what is going to happen in the long term, or should you rather focus on things that you can visualize in the short term? But for me, if your vision is going to be transformational, then you need to be thinking very much in the long term, notwithstanding the fact that you can't necessarily see all the things that will happen on your way there. But I think if your vision is going to be impactful and transformational, it needs to be more long term, and that's why I would subscribe to that 2063 model. But as you do that, you obviously review as you go to see where you are at and how you can.
How do you review? That's the question.
Yeah. But I'm saying if you are going to be impactful and transformational, first of all, you need to think in the long term. Yeah.
Instead of reviewing.
Okay. So that's the balance perhaps between thinking fast and thinking slow. Thinking short term as you move towards the long term. So I just wanted to come in there as well. And in terms of values, I just want to throw in that for me, what I've tended to see and in the discussions here and what I've read about the hub is that there could be a value for a space that you create as the hub, where people can move away from their normal way of doing things, depending on where they are coming from, and be able to liberate themselves in this space. So for me, that space is a value. Okay.
That's very, very good.
It's always becoming better and better and sweeter. Thinking slow or thinking fast are inevitable, because you need both. The law of opposites says that you must have both the positive and the negative.
Yin and yang.
There is no movement without resistance. And sometimes we have a proverb which says you first look and then you jump. You might be moving very fast, then you lock and then you jump and you revise. Now I want to invite all of you to be artists. Whether you are a scientist, whether you are a mathematician, whether you are a politician, whether you are... I would like to request all of you to be artists. Why? Because if I looked around very quickly and saw what would be very good to use. And I must thank the children of this place, whoever does the putting up of things. Look at these baskets. Every basket is a basket, but each one is different. The structure looks the same, but the patterns in each basket is different. Now, when I think about smart partnership, what comes into my mind is more of the feeling than anything else. How do I feel about this group? The feeling. What do I think about this group? And of course, I can't say all that I feel or that I think. And when I was just with Andrew, we are discussing this saying, which says, we think more than we say, we feel more than we think, we are more than what we feel, what we think, and what we say. Now, a vision of a country or of anything actually depends on what do the people want. What do the people feel? What is that they desire to have? Where they desire to go? And therefore it depends on their ability to see what is beyond the hill. Their ability to see what cannot be obviously seen in the nearby fact. And the ability to be able to mobilize everybody, to be determined to achieve that goal and have hope in that. Now, for us as artists, if you start you have to start any art piece. Talk about a tapestry, talk about of a pot, talk about of a painting. All you have is that idea or that message you want to share. And all you might have, if it is a painting, is a canvas and just a number of colors. Now, your challenge, therefore, is that you have that picture in your mind, in your imagination, which you want to bring forward and use as a message to the people. Therefore, your challenge is, how will you steadily, from the white canvas, or if it is clay, from this soft, to get what the engineer called the outcome, or what you want to say the desired, and in the military we call it the end state. What is the end state of your fighting? Why are you fighting? What do you want to achieve? So I think that that canvas, or that tapestry, or that painting, or that basket, because for the basket, everybody starts from the center, what we call a togo, that place in the middle, where you begin the basket, is a starting point. And my logo and my company is a spiral, because a line is a continuation of a dot. You add a dot to a dot to a dot, you form a line, and the line can continue to infinity. But somebody talked about having a framework. A painting has a limitation of the frame. You must keep within that canvas. You must keep within that. Now, if I was looking at that nice collage of drummers, of lady who happen to be ladies, where they are drumming from, but he was trying to put the picture within that limitation. And he had put each piece of cloth with the vision of what he wants to get out. And that's what I would like to say, that really, everything, there is this word which calls it depends. Last time when we discussed in Dar es Salaam, we said the question of period depends. It depends on each individual country, it depends on the circumstances on the ground, it depends on the ability of the people to understand. Now, that's a crucial word, I think, that must be carried forward. People do not do what they should. They do what they understand. They do better what they understand than what they should. We all could say we want to achieve this. For Uganda, we have said we want to be a first world. But are we, now that's what brings in also what we discussed last time. Are we all included in this thinking? Are we inclusive? Do we understand how we need to go there and what step by step, whether what color to put first, and if it doesn't work, we mix it with another color, and how do you organize the final shape and the final harmony of those colors? Are we all in, we have a drama in our country, where I say, are we all in class? Where am class? Be in the class. If somebody doesn't understand anything, they say, please be in class. Are we all in the class of that movement, of that process, of that commitment? Because in the military, for example, we have, from the vision or the end state you want to achieve, we have a strategy. Under the strategy, we have tactics. Strategy is from A to Z. What strategy do you use to achieve the end state? Tactics is from A to B, B to C, C to D, which are called tactics. As our vision understood at every level, on what steps we shall have to go to, what pains we might have to suffer, what sacrifices we might have to give, what commitments and hard work and effort we need to put in financial inclusion, in technology inclusion and innovation, in standards inclusion. What are the measures that need to be done. So the whole point, even about smart partnership, is how do we make each other understand this so-called the best, smartest movement of the world. And at the end of it, I was thinking, you know, there was a lot of opposites. I remember the song of Tuta Wagona and Dolly Parton. It said, to love and hate at the same time. Around it sway, the two is fine. But two has bound me, holding so strong and hard to let you go. Now, you find that everything has a complementarity. Even your wife or your husband is God's voice in your house to tell you the opposite of what you don't want to know. So that there is some balance. There is some balance. So I think we should not call slowness bad, because it is playing a role, and there are things which need to be slow. We should not call thinking fast, because you could easily make a mistake if you rush. So I think the whole point should be on how do we paint our future. What picture do we want to get out of this? And how best... I was about to say that think smart is the best, because you must balance. Is it necessary to be slow this time, or should we move fast? Now, with all of you who have written
Before you go, Joseph, what does that say? Tell him about it. Joseph? Joseph? What does that textile say?
It's a Ravan. We normally use it to announce something. That piece it's called Ravana. Normally in Sri Lanka we use it to announce something. Like we play it to announce, like in a good Ravana. Drum, yeah.
But the question is that everybody is told to participate to drum. That you are Sinhalese or Tamil or whatever, and you are actually celebrating happiness, irrespective of where you are. You understand why subtly we put that there. It's mine, that one, but I thought I'd make a point towards you speaking.
No, I mean, what I want to end with is to say that that's where smart is the smartest way of drumming, of painting, where everyone is given a brush, to put his color, to add his mark or her mark, to contribute, and then we look at it and say, is it becoming out well? Is it becoming nice? Are we getting smarter? And because that is our end state, is the world, the smarter world. Starting from oneself. When you look at yourself, everybody is designed to complement the other. Everything is by opposites and balance. Without it, whatever goes up must come down. Thank you.
Alan, I am a bit sort of confused. The quality and standard. It appears that there is some contradiction between quality and standards here. Because how do you judge the quality of this?
Thanks, performance.
Good morning. I'm very glad that this session is addressing the subject of visions. I'm not going to sing, and I got my kilt this morning. But I have just come back from 3 weeks in Latin America, and what strikes me parallel between this continent that I've just visited and in Africa, there are many points in common. Struggling to eradicate poverty, struggling to eradicate corruption, struggling to make the best use of natural resources to build infrastructures and create jobs and realize economic and social transformation. And talking about visions, I consider myself as a junior smart partner. I have just 4 years of contribution. But one of the reasons I am so interested in try to contribute to the movement is that it is a unique place to help people and governments and heads of state and government to shape up and their national visions and make them happen. And so I'm glad that we are addressing this point this morning, and I hope we will address it more as we move along to the Global Dialogue 2014. Talking about visions, the Smart Partnership movement has over 25 years. But in the past 10 years, a very short period of time, the paradigms of economic and social transformation on the planet have changed dramatically. And this is something that must be taken into consideration when you build a national vision, because you are thinking 10, 20, 30 years. And the paradigms, meaning the drivers of economic and social transformation, have changed dramatically in the past 10 years. World trade, I will just give you a few figures, but it's important when we talk about visions to have that in mind. The volume of world trade compared to the world gross national product is more than 30% today. It was 15% 30 years ago. It means that world trade has become an important paradigm. Another one is the interrelated challenges of climate change, energy, water, and nutrition. Two decades ago, this was not a priority in the world. Another one is technology, nano, bio, but also communication, information technologies, with the consequence that the world is flat. You can do business anywhere using information communication technologies. And you have social networks. Social networks are important. Just think that there are more mobile phones on the planet than there are human beings. More. And there are 2.5 billion users of the internet. But this is not spread evenly. That's 2.5 billion users of the internet. That's a paradigm. 2 decades ago, it didn't exist. The financial crisis has come with the issue of ethics, social responsibility. These things, when you talk about national visions, you must take them into account. Urban concentration. More than 70% of the people on the planet live in an urban environment. This is a major change. So these paradigms, we have to take them into consideration when we assist in shaping up national visions and making them happen. And the important thing for smart partners is that because of social networks, because of information and communication technology, of course, face-to-face interaction as we are doing is important, but the multiplying effect of what we do can be enhanced by communication technologies. So I'm very glad that we addressed the subject of visions, and I hope that as we progress to Global Dialogue next year, we can make an updated contribution of the Smart Partnership movement in 2013 or 14, what we can bring to national visions compared to what we could do 20 years ago. And it's significantly different.
But just, you see, you said about paradigms, but one of the, going back to carpet painting for song, one of the problems that we have is that we cannot visualize, for instance, by the way of communication, when we are told there will be the ability to have so much petabytes. Does anybody visualize what means petabytes? Or there is a very, very small, the nano. Can we visualize that? We aim to use nano for drug distribution in the body and all the rest of it. So the words and the images don't quite help us also to do this. So the only way we can, I think, we go back to patterns, yeah, because the carpet or that is a pattern, yeah, and the movement creates continuously patterns, yeah, and flows, and probably branches and forms, and then patterns again. So it's a pattern that is continuously emerging. The pattern, I don't know what you mean by pattern, yeah?
Well, weaving is a way of communication, by the way. I just come back from the country of the Incas in Peru. They didn't have an alphabet, they didn't write, the Incas. But what has been discovered recently is that they communicated by weaving. So the textiles that you find are in fact telling stories. So I will read the book on Scotland tapestry because I have to half Scotland. But weaving is also a way of communicating.
I think there are two, at least, there are two kinds of people, the thinkers and the doers. The thinkers needs a free-flowing, self-organizing environment, but the doers needs a framework. But I think we need both kind of people. I'm not saying we need one or the other. But when the thinkers are talking, then it doesn't necessarily always die with the doers, because the doers need a framework. And then if you look at the evolution, there is a self-organization. Life through self-organization evolved. And it takes billions of years. And I think we cannot afford that. This is where the doers need transformation. And transformation requires framework. And vision, national vision must translate into transformation. Otherwise, it's still the thinking part rather than a doing part. And then vision, correct, you need the long-term thing, but you have to do something now to get to the long-term. So you need a short-term action to achieve the long-term objective. That is transformation. Now, it was unfortunate that my friend, the general, compared the artists to national leadership and the development of vision. The artist works on his own. He has his own vision, and he paints that according to his own vision. If he has been asked to get what does the nation feel, he will never get this thing done. Picasso will never be allowed to draw what he did if he asks opinion from people around him. So then that's the difference. Developing national vision is not the artist doing a painting. I bet you disagree. But
he painted what the people felt.
Oh, then you can never get an image what the people felt, because if you have 2 million people, there will be 2 million different of you, or maybe 10 million. So something has got to happen to make this happen. This is where yes.
Where is Lekoma? Lekom.
Let me finish.
You come up to say the story about the Muchuli carpet.
You have to be practical. The country where there are too much democracy in the developing world doesn't get anywhere. There's a change every other day. There is no continuity. Then nothing happens because long-term vision transformation takes time to do. So if you change your leadership every other day, nothing will happen. So you need continuity. So vision has got to take that into consideration. People keep asking me, why did it happen in Malaysia? It's not the best example. Why did it happen? There is continuity because development takes time. But if we change our leadership every other day, nothing will happen. So we have countries in the world now that is too democratic and nothing ever happens. When I first saw this title, National Vision, Aspiration and Transformation, I suggested to Mahela, at the end of that we should say what's new, because we have been talking vision, aspiration for the last so many years. But she put it right into new insight. And some of you new insight Ellen has brought up. These are the things which are real now. So we cannot be talking about what we did, our vision 2 or 3 or 4 years ago. That needs to be translated into what is happening now. And that needs to translate into transformation. And transformation requires not evolution, it requires framework. And we must have immediate action to meet long-term objectives. Thank you.
I don't think I have much more to add to what Dr. Omar said about transformation in structure, the framework. I think talking about changing leadership. I just want to say there that maybe it's not changing leadership that's a problem. The problem is changing the vision every time. In the US, in America, they have a vision to be number one in every sphere, in science, technology, and it doesn't matter whether it's a Democrat or a Republican president who comes in there. The structure does not change. The problem is if leadership, every time you change leadership, you also change everything. So you are starting from the beginning every time.
No, but you didn't say what I was suggesting you to say.
Can I say it for you?
No, hold a second. There was this idea that Omar said that the artists should not be coming because they may be right, but just when Secretary Masira, together with the whole team, were trying to initiate a vision which later on became the Vision 2016, and the people participated and all the rest of it, and they still do. Before he made that speech, and the speech itself was done in a way that was launched at the independence on 30th of September, which became the main rallying point Paul will tell us in the last few years for trying to see where the vision goes. He didn't have the right words. He had Swana words, he had whatever words to express what he thought and his colleagues thought should be put in that vision. So he told Lekoma, well, maybe, you remember Lekoma, maybe we should have a Mochudi carpet. We have a story, we need to put a story in a carpet. So it wasn't the fact that the carpet was replacing the vision and a framework. It was that is part and parcel of the structure or the framework that you are kind of made to engage people. So it's not one or either, because the structure that one says will change by tomorrow and so on. But the spirit of it has to be built into something which is there. So I don't know in Namibia, DPR. Because there is lots to know
I
from
will
the
talk a
swap
little bit general.
Yes.
Than the experience of Namibia. I was just looking at what we have here: national visions, aspirations, and transformation, new insights. And why nations fail. And I wanted just to amend the Peter here in why nations fail, and say why do nations seem to fail? Not all nations that really fail, but they seem to fail. Now, when you look at this, Dr. Michaela, when you look at the vision, aspirations, transformations, would you ask yourself what's really a vision? It's a plan way ahead. And the aspirations, these are a collective feelings of different people with different interests. And then you talk about transformations. What do you transform? Is it the system or the people? You see, and that is where I thought one should look into, and maybe the new insight of complementing what we seem to be failing. The new insight I will look at this forum here, where you share. Now, Dr. Michaela, you see, sometimes these things comes as a fashion. Most of the visions, when we started making visions, we look at Botswana, Botswana have made a vision, and Namibia make one, and so on, we go on, we go on. All the changes we bring in are the yes. That's all we bring in. But what I think where we why the perceptions from our own people, no matter what you do, seems to say we are failing, is because they did not participate and understood exactly what we want to do. And to some extent, when we say 2030, I don't know. You see, 2030 and you end there and nothing will happen or what? You see, it is a process that will never end. Development will never end. But when you say 2016, people believe by 2016 we have got everything and we sit back. Nothing will happen. So the participation of the people and the collective understanding of what we want to achieve and why we want to achieve it by a certain date and what we may need after that. Ours says by 2030 we will have reached the level of the developed countries. So what? when we reach the level of the developed countries, is that the end of the world? No. We have to go ahead, because by the time we reach the level of Britain, after 2030, things would have changed. So the process, in my view, should be understood clearly. First, the vision should be understood by not only the office bearers or the government, but by the people. But also we must know, and that's where it's important, the issue made by Dr. Omar there, my friend the artist. You see, taking the people along, you have got different people, some don't even want to listen to you. Of course, what we think here is that the majority of the people who are interested should understand, because those are the doers that will involve themselves in understanding issues. To let those who don't understand and take them along. But on the other hand, politicians and their officials should not sit in the office to make visions and then to announce that. And that is the problem. When you announce something, you announce it, it ends there. Tomorrow, the majority of the people don't understand. Even some of them, they don't know what is the vision all about. Then, really, the aspirations of people is so important. But honestly speaking, you cannot be 100% inclusive. The basic, of course, one should accommodate. Transformation is so important. You cannot transform me if I don't understand where you are taking me. I have first to understand, to know what changes you want to bring in my life, to go with you along so that I feel, yes, something has transformed from A to B to C. Otherwise, really, you talk about the way that leaves people around there. Now, new insight. As I have said earlier, visions to some extent have come to many of our countries as a fashion, because the other have it, we should have it. Yes. And of course, the insight for us leaders and others to understand that the process of sharing is important, and that the process of taking people along is important. That insight, I believe, should be brought by platforms like this. That is important. And I'm happy that, I never knew many of our leaders, our presidents. But I fully appreciate most of our presidents now when we come to these meetings. And you also understand that apparently they do the same, they do have the same feelings like all other people are having. But we did not have that opportunity to share our ideas with them and to listen to them. Last time in Dar es Salaam, I was very, very impressed when President Museveni was saying, look, we don't have glasses to see, the economic sense of things in our countries. And those glasses we need to get. And then he told the story of the crocodiles that have been eaten. My friend, Professor Ivan from Uganda. It's a story of crocodiles. He said, these crocodiles have been eating us all the time. And then there came some people from Zimbabwe, business people, and they started farming with these crocodiles. And I went to them, they told me these crocodiles are now bringing in a lot of money. You see? But we have been eaten by the crocodile. So those sharing of thoughts and experiences from a head of state is so important that you understand that it is true. The problem we have is that we don't have the know-how to make things work economically and otherwise in our countries. And that is what we should at least share at platforms like that. And I think that is the importance of the new insight. That new insight should come from here. It should come from platforms like this. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Jack Smith from Canada, professor at the University of Ottawa, and I'm a foresight specialist. And the discussion of vision is very much related to foresight in the sense that foresight tells us about some fundamental concepts that are new to policy. One is that it's an outside-in versus inside-out vision. That means it increasingly is derived from our collective experience as humans on the planet in areas like sustainability and energy and food and water. There are some concepts I also want to introduce in terms of acronyms. Please forgive me for using acronyms. In the world of PowerPoint, I know there's no PowerPoint, but
no acronyms.
No acronyms. Well, I'm going to talk about meta-scanning of science, technology, and innovation, which my organization does a lot of. And in those areas, there are three fundamental drivers. One is the driver of convergent systems like bioinfo, nano, and cognitive systems together. Second is the increasing importance of big data. The third is what I call Wi-Fi GI, which is wireless infrastructure, government innovation, for innovation in governance and institutions. And the next concept is that of sustainability and nexus of energy, food, and water. Project we're doing with the Rockefeller Foundation and APEC Center for Tech Foresight in Asia. And finally,
you have 3 days for this, so pick up one.
Yeah, this is just the introduction.
Yeah. Okay.
Final concept is that of foresight as a policy aligning tool, and the importance of impact measurement of foresight. We have an impact measurement instrument I can discuss with you later. Thank you.
The foresight and vision.
Yes. The synergies of foresight and vision as a policy innovation instrument for governments.
What? What? Why?
Why? To give us better wisdom, to give expression of our collective outside-in visions, and to involve diverse stakeholders, and to respect the multiple, plausible, contingent nature of the future of change.
Is that thinking through?
I think so.
And who is the audience? Sorry, Jack knows too many things. Well, what did the Cabinet Secretary of Swaziland do with foresight?
Mbuzi, can you ask him questions that he says he could do some things for the vision of Swaziland? This foresight.
I've been settling into it for quite a while, so I need to go back to the beginning and reflect on some of the things that were said, particularly from the AU. And this 50-year vision, now used to 2020, so now we go to 50, you know, actually see 50 years from now. And given the rate of change of things, it can really go that far, the way to go. Because in Swaziland right now, ours is 2022. And we went to Botswana, we went to Rwanda, we went to Kenya to learn on how they do it. And when we came back, Cabinet agreed that this is the right way to do it. So we just had elections, the new prime minister, the new cabinet. So we're now ready to go under the new administration, 2013 to 2019. And we agreed that in order for them to proceed properly, we needed to review the 2022 vision. So now we are in the process of finalizing that. So that the new government that is going to take place will build everything based on that revised vision. So the question is, as the chairman has said, should we continue revising the plan in the old way that Malaysia used to do? Or we need to revise the plan in a new way now? Because everything has changed. So I'm really keen to know which direction we should go, because everything seems to have changed right now. But I like this concept of innovation, because we in Swaziland have now gone to agree on electronic government. So the new cabinet is operating on a paperless e-cabinet solution. So innovation to me is a big issue, and I'm happy that it's brought it into the fore, because it's an area that we believe all the new ministers, the new challenge we're going to give to them and say, look, you find a new government with a way of doing things. So in what way is it going to change under your administration? What innovations you need to bring in as the leader, and for us as public servants to help you achieve what your vision is.
How do we adapt the innovation continuously to the pace of change that we see around us?
Exactly.
And how, as agents of governance, do we lead that, and from an outside in, bringing that discussion to our people and to the multiple diverse stakeholders that are both inside our nations and outside?
But would one say that foresight is a type of advice within the structures that one has?
It's a process of dialogue and networked partnership and collective imagination of what could be as well as what may be, very contingent and adaptive, and it's anticipatory, not predictive.
So therefore, does it bring insights to the transformation to the system, as Deputy Prime Minister was saying? Because for the vision to happen.
Yes, through the stories we tell each other and the diverse observations of the pulse of change that we bring to those discussions, we form new understanding of what may happen and what impact that change may have on our structures, institutions, and society.
Okay, come on, tell us, in Canada, we had a foresight unit set up within Prime Minister's office, or how? Because that's what we're trying to get. Some within the framework, no mind where we are today, but what was, yeah.
I was the foresight advisor of the Prime Minister of Canada, Prime Minister Martin, through the Dr. Carty National Science Advisors Office. And we developed some visions for Canada's future, which we see gradually unfolding and adapting to change as it goes. It's very dynamic and it's thinking slow. It evolves slowly, but it changes quickly sometimes.
Did the exercise involve involvement of stakeholders on a larger scale, not experts, but was it understood by the people? the process itself, of course.
To a point, I
It is.
mean, it
That's
was
the-
institutionally diverse, not popularly diverse.
That's it, is the institutional.
I think that's where, to me, it appears that what we are saying in this, as not what is to be done in dialogue, what is to be done in the country, but as a CPTM Smart Partner Network, for us, the quality of the foresight exercise would be judged on the basis of participation, understanding. I think those two are the key questions we will keep asking. So that's, and then no matter what institution you set up, the process of the institution, does it involve, to what extent those two dimensions are involved in it, is the constant question we have to ask.
Can I come in here just on the foresight bit? Let me say this, and I think that I'm correct in saying this. Vision does not change much. If you say you want to be here, where you want to be, I think it's almost constant. Maybe some little changes here and there. We all want to be a harmonious country. Everybody not fighting one another. We want to be prosperous, and we want to be sustainable. Basically, just to put it simply, may change a bit here and there, but vision doesn't change. How do you achieve the vision? That is what will change. And this depends on what is new.
Yes.
This depends on the circumstances which is there and circumstances which may appear in the future. And this is where foresight comes in. If you have a foresight structure, you may see what is happening, and that will alert you to see what you need to be doing. So that's the minister from Swaziland, or the permanent secretary from Swaziland. Achieving the vision, the objective, will have to change. It will never be constant. It has to change. You may even have to turn backward and then go forward again. It's going like going through the river, and when you come to the rapid, what do? You may turn back to find an easier passage, or you get yourself ready to actually jump the rapid, whatever it is. So achieving that requires a change. And here is where foresight may help if you know what is coming.
Absolutely. We've done some scenarios for the ASEAN countries in Asia on sustainable, inclusive innovation in energy, food, and water, and the interdependence of those three areas. Noting that some countries have real pressure points in one or more of those three areas of energy, food, and water. And that means that they may need to look at some changing investments in sustainable technologies and or inclusiveness to increase their innovation rates in those areas.
But should one somehow conclude that these vision processes within the governance as a whole, not just government, could do with some ongoing advice which one calls foresight? And of course that foresight has to be driven from the government, from within the government, otherwise the others won't associate with it. Although it may not be the foresight of the government that initiates the foresight. It may in fact, even if the government cannot engage and communicate, may even not come back when elections come.
I was
So
wondering
the
if Jack could give us
foresight,
some
that's
example,
it.
if you could bring it down
Yeah.
just to one more
Concrete.
specific level.
In
You use
Canada.
that wonderful word anticipate, not predict. Can you give us some example in your country of where anticipation has sort of helped that process of steering the vision, which Omar was describing?
Well, for example, Canada is very rich in all sorts of energy. And we have anticipated many different types of energy usage in the future, some of which are being exploited now and some of which are not yet exploited, like the gas hydrants, for example, in the north. The oil sands are being exploited now, but they have a limited lifetime, although they're quite a substantial reserve. They probably have a limited lifetime unless their cleanliness factor can be improved. So we looked at sustainability in that context, and the vision of what Canada's energy would need to be, energy mix would need to be on a sustainable basis in the future. And that was one dimension of how we looked at it. In terms of how foresight plays into the policy process we have in our foresight measurement, 3 stages of alignment: pre-policy, policy, and policy implementation. We asked foresight participants, how well prepared is this foresight process enabling these different stages of policy? And we've even developed 8 measures of critical success factors for government-led foresight, which, if you apply the test, many foresight exercises do not meet the test because they fail to anticipate changing regimes of political leadership. And if you do, and I had some personal experience with this, in terms of my organization did not make that transformation, which is why I now work in the university, not in the Prime Minister's office. Some different regimes have different tolerances toward foresight as anticipatory instruments. But our success factor list is a formula for how you can transcend regime change.
Thank you.
Can I make some contribution? I didn't note this down, so let me be slow. I have 3 points I want to make. Now I'll touch on foresight also. The first one, I want to go back to what Omar remarked earlier on, that there are thinkers and there are doers. That is actually correct, but I think we do both. We are both doers and thinkers. The extent to which we concentrate on thinking and on doing may vary depending on the tasks available. And I think that is a critical thing to bear in mind, because ultimately output comes on the basis of real doing. So it's important that we structure our overall way of doing things so that we give adequate time, adequate framework, adequate facilitation to actually do it. That's my first point. The second point, I want to go back to the various organs which are responsible for implementation of vision, national vision. From our deliberations, I get a feeling that actually they should bear in mind that they have 2 major tasks. One is that monitoring of the implementation and facilitating within your country, ensuring that you are on track and so forth. But the other role actually could be called foresight, taking into account exogenous factors which perhaps you didn't think of earlier on when you formulated the vision. The kind of points Alan was saying. You might have been thinking of expansion of energy, generating internationally, but now this is cross-border. Maybe there are new developments taking place elsewhere. So that foresight role is a very vital one for the vision monitoring team to be able then to advise and indicate necessary variations in order to achieve the vision. My third point and final one relates to what the Deputy Prime Minister indicated. That, when they did their vision, they looked around, and in some cases they realized, you can just change the year. I have a feeling that from CPTM angle, we can actually play another facilitative role of ensuring that we hear the various different visions and try to establish why they are different. Ultimately, the difference which matters must be based on the drivers. I think different countries have major drivers for the economy. Some, it could be the diamonds, some have oil. All these resources get finished one day. Others have nothing, but they have embarked on tourism. So an understanding of meaningful variations in our national visions might enrich the extent to which we can then adapt from country to country and move forward. Very briefly, I thought these 3 points occurred as many of you have been. Thank you.
Well, I certainly agree that comparing national visions is an important element, particularly in the Commonwealth context with such diversity that we have. We can, I think, be a proxy for some of the pathways the planet needs to take in the future.
But I still kind of not yet. I didn't hear the full story. Now why now you are in university, but and why the current governance. And the current governance, they still believe in a vision of Canada, and they are dealing without foresight.
They're dealing with a shorter version of force, a shorter term version of force.
A short term, short.
More exploitation than
more exploitation.
Serves conservation.
But the vision is the same, I suppose.
Well, to some degree, governance pressures of popular democracies push you toward learning from your predecessors and your political antagonists, and you end up having to adopt some of each other's practices and policies.
Now, when you were in Prime Minister's office, you had a team who did foresight with people from within various parts of the government and outside the government, yeah?
Yes.
So by the time the Prime Minister and the Cabinet and the Parliament were aware about the foresight, not the report, how did they get to be briefed about the foresight and the spin-offs from the foresight of a particular? Because is it, for instance, that the issue with the crocodile could be identified in a foresight? Because I think that it would be useful to think of having a foresight. You know, the crocodile issue.
Well, essentially we have a process of briefings and dialogue with Parliament in Canada, but not as institutionally delivered as in Finland, for example, where there actually is a committee of the Parliament that does foresight.
Only Sweden.
Yes, the Scandinavian countries, I think, are the furthest advanced in terms of their institutional structures for embedding foresight in government. Canada would be somewhere below the UK. The UK has had a successful UK foresight office that has spanned 3 or 4 changes of regime and continues to invest in strategic thinking.
They just published this future of manufacturing, which we'll talk about a week ago, but from the Department of Industry.
I have a question. With the modern science and technology, is the present world more predictable than ever before?
Maybe more anticipatory, perhaps.
Is the world more predictable? Are we able to predict better than before what is likely to happen or the changes that are likely to take place?
According to the new chief scientist of Britain, which he went to Cambridge and set the tone about the view of UK government in relation to recent climate change report. The climate change report was one of the historical science evidence, the collective 200 or so scientists And that demonstrated also the predictive analytical power that currently we have. That has nothing to do with the perception of the people about the fact that they follow or they don't follow. So I suppose one could say you do, particularly because of this big data, which probably
on macro-factorial change, yes, I think there are increasing confidence, but on micro national will or acceptance, I don't know if there's been much change. I mean, the social ecology of human adaptation continues to be very unpredictable. And even where science gives you confidence that the developments today will see some transformative impact in 5 or 10 or 20 years.
In fact, why did the financial Alan Greenspan had some of the best models for mathematics. And just recently he said he had everything but a human. And the culture, he didn't, was a weak link. So yes, we do have predictive analytical tools, elements, but they are unable to yet engage the human and the risk. You want to say something, Sarah?
Okay,
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, hold a second, Sarah. Just pick up.
Sorry.
Umpo wants to say something.
Sarah, why don't you go?
Sarah.
Just reflecting on that point, as a scientist, we spend all of our time making models. And with your models, you can only base it both on the maths you have, so you're limited by the fundamental language, but also on the data you're putting in. And with every model, you have to know the limitations of it, and that's almost more important than knowing what it can predict. So when it predicts something, you have to know whether you think that's likely to be right or wrong. And because all the data that we're inputting is based on other things that we perceive, it's naturally biased by the perception of the people looking at it, and indeed by the snapshot in time we take. Because any data we look at, because it will be produced from a human society, is going to have human influence, which will keep innovating and keep putting in dynamic things which won't be reflected in the data we include, the snapshots. So inevitably, we will never actually be able to predict what's going to happen, because the fundamental limited efficiencies of our models means that it's literally going to be a snapshot of, from what we've seen, where the world would go were only that data available. And as it's not, then we're never going to actually be able to predict with any certainty anything.
But if you believe never, then what's the point to do anything more?
Well, if you look at something like aerodynamics, we're very bad at predicting that. And it's a very rough structure, but yet we still fly aeroplanes. So it's not necessarily understanding exactly how things work or why things work, but it's understanding that they work, when they work, and what we can do with that availability.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, at last.
On a row. Two women in a row.
Pardon? I know. It seems like just because I'm the same height as Mihaela, she has this tendency, are you passing? Of overlooking us. So you keep on up until you get tired of lifting your hand. Fast and slow. Fast and slow, well, that's as far back I've been trying to raise my hand. It depends on the environment that you are in, the situation or the circumstances you are faced with, and the desperation at that particular moment, which forces you to either think fast or to think slow. Why am I saying this? If there's no threat, and you have got all the peace and all the time and all the resources, you have the time and to think slowly and check all your, do all your check and balances, play around with that. But if it's a matter of life and death now, and you have to find a solution now, you have to think fast. Right now in Gaborone, we have a serious problem of water. Our dam is almost zero. I think we have about 2 or 3 months amount of water. So people are thinking fast. They have no laxity, like I was saying to Mihaela, no laxity to be brain think-tanking of all the possibilities that might come. We need a solution like now. Fast thinking. Now, I tend to agree with what Omar was saying. National visions. In the case of Botswana, we went around the country, each and everyone, including myself. I also gave my personal aspiration of what I wanted to see Botswana be, the kind of Botswana I wanted to see in 2016. And it was on the basis of all these aspirations that we coined what we call our national vision, which is 2016, when we turn 50 years of independence. Now, trying to argue that when you paint or you weave a tapestry, you cannot come up with the same visions or perceptions or my aspirations in that tapestry for everybody as we are seated in this room right now. I was looking at these 2 baskets. As you were talking, they might seem identical. Can you just show, if the camera can pick those 2 so that they see them on the screen? These 2 which are right here. Yeah. They might look identical, but they are not identical. Yeah. If they were made by 2 different people and you ask them, because one time I had an opportunity to ask these women who weave, what is your, what are you trying to do? What is the story behind what you are weaving? Everyone will tell you something different. So you cannot conclude that an artist, each and every artist, their expression on the tapestry is the same, is universal. No, it's not. Now, coming to the vision. Botswana vision is prosperity for all. And now the issue of prosperity for all. My interpretation, if you ask me to define what do I mean by prosperity, I would explain it the way I want to define prosperity. What is it I would, if I say I'm prospering, what is it I would be seen to have achieved by the time I'm 2016? Right? And it might be different from somebody depending on the economic level or their education level or whatever background, their interpretation, their definition of how they would define prosperity and what they would define having attained prosperity by that time. So there's a difference. So it's a continuum, it's a process. And in the case of Botswana, we talk about educated and informed. So you are continuously getting educated. You can't say, I'm educated enough. So I've achieved, I've arrived. No, it's a process. So a vision is like what you continue, what you have out there that you are continuously striving for. It's a process you are continuously striving for. And yes, now the plans, the national plans, the implementation processes, and all the factors around that, that's what changes. That changes because of all the impact that you have, the economic change, the climatic changes, this, you are trying to grapple with this, and that changes the plans that you are putting in process in achieving that vision. So, and you can't say, yes, it's because of the dam. If you are looking at energy, coming to my honorable minister, if you are looking at a particular sector of a vision, or if you are looking at a particular, the vision of a company, that's also different. Because if you are looking at a particular sector, that means you are looking at a sector of energy. how are we going to maximize our profits in achieving ABCD? And we are looking at that. And then you play around with your plans and your processes, your framework, you change it, you do that. But the fact of the matter is that the goal is there. And whether you develop your local resources or we get energy from South Africa, whatever, what matters is we have got the energy we want. We have got the water I want. But another thing is that when you talk of national vision, it's not a top-down. It's not a top-down approach where people sit in their offices or come up with ideas. No, there's also a very important element, and that's a bottom-up approach. It has to go both ways. You have to involve the people, find out what they are saying. Technology, yes. But also these people, the grassroots people, they know how to survive in that type of environment. And I believe education, technology should also merge with that indigenous knowledge, improve it to enhance development, not to just shine or get rid of it, and it should be a technology which is just imported, coming from abroad and is brought. That's why it fails, because I don't know how to use this. I know how to use that, which is something I was brought up with, and that's why I think Asia or China is succeeding, because they are using their indigenous knowledge and merging it with technology. Merci beaucoup.
Okay, if you didn't know why the Vision 2016 in Botswana is here, now you know. So Umpo is from the beginning, part of the Vision Council. So I think she spoke a little bit from her own personal point of view. Am I right, Stefan? As well as she mixed up or tried to also do justice to the Vision Council as a group. So there is this probably thing that we have where we are confused. Do we need to set up a Vision Council type, which is maintaining that vision interaction, bottom up, diagonally, top down, and everything else? Do we need to do that? That's a structure. And who does that? I know maybe the DM can tell us. Because the government, the Prime Minister, the President, and the Parliament need to be seen that they are part of it. So is the government giving legitimacy to the Vision Council, which might be there even after the government is changed? They will have elections next year. Huh? So in addition to the fact the year after there will be another end of Vision 2016 and probably beyond 2016. What do you think? So we have your experience here.
Yeah, Michaela, I think I have recently learned the term of looking beyond not a term but an idea which is taking root on the continent of Africa, that leaders should look beyond the term of their office. And that's exactly what one of the members was talking about in terms of continuation. Now, a vision, as I said, should be understood, accepted, and lived by the nationals. It should be part of them. They should own it. It should not be owned by not by the office bearers, because when they go, and that is the problem we have, when they go, you are back to square one. Who should drive the vision? It is true that the top leadership should drive the vision. They should not own it, but they should drive it. In driving it, it should be accommodating everybody. They should speak about it everywhere where they are. They should lead the campaign programs that popularize the vision, that allows people to understand why
what and why the vision is there. But of course, it is important that in doing that, they may need a body that will always liaise with their office and the public so that work is continuously done. But it is really important that it should not be owned by a group of people who may one day disappear in terms of leaving the offices and you are about to spare one. So leading it, of course, the head of the top government leaders, but owning it, the population. And I think I will agree that maybe the office of the president of the prime minister needs a very active body that will continuously assist them to drive the vision. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, Isidore.
Yeah, Miela, I come from Africa, if you don't know. Yes, wait. I'm not going to organize everyone in the union here. But there's an old saying from Africa which says, if you want to go very fast, you go alone. But you are not assured of arriving where you are going. But if you want to get there, you go with others.
Yes.
Because then there is security. My grandfather was a traditional hunter, nomadic, Mr. Manando himself. That's how I inherited that Manando name. What they used to do as a strategy, because we are being scientific and sometimes over-scientific about things that have been there, some of which just require us re-saying, maybe let's appreciate the past. You know how they hunted Miela in Africa? First and foremost, let me say, they depended on red meat, but they never suffered from gout. Because they knew how to balance red meat and the roots that they inherited from the bushes. They didn't destroy the forests.
Yes.
They didn't overrun animals to the extent that they became extinct. They only went to hunt when the need arose, right? They would have a group of impis or powerful boys, not as tall as me, because they now scare animals away. A gang goes that way, maybe 15 of them with us guys, spears made out of stones. I'm talking of the Stone Age now. And another one goes there, but they all carried very small drums that they carved from hides of what they hunted. And they communicated by saying, animals would never know what is happening. They would think it could be another animal. But by the time they get around all these kudus are busy grazing. On the other side, where they want to kill the animals, there would be nets made out of some very strong weed which is found in the hills. I'm taking you back there because we become over scientific about things, when in actual fact life is very real from then and now. Right. So those ones who were playing small drums changed and they started playing big drums making noise so that the animals ran only one side. Whether it was a lion, it would be scared. They start racing for life, those animals. And these ones behind didn't have to run to catch the animal. All they were waiting for is to make sure that the animals are going to fall into booby traps. Whether they dug canals, they break their feet, that's how they had it. And I'm saying they were doing it in community. Now, smart partnership is not about going it alone. It's going together with others so that you get there. The objectives, the strategies. Of course, using innovation and strategic thinking as to what is it that you want to do and how you want to do it. Now, I'm not going to give you trade union cards so that you join the labor movement. But the concept of uniting together to achieve a set goal is one which I want to think has outlived all of us. It has always been there. But the mistake that we make is you want to run too fast on your own, Professor. I'm not so sure whether the lion will not catch you there. But if you want me to join you and the rest, we will work together peacefully and get there. So the Philip keys of this world, who would run the Greek runner, and the slow tortoise people need each other to coexist, in my view. We must be able to share in communities, in societies, the thinking of fast moving and the slow moving, and combine those and achieve our goals. That's what I wanted to say. When you come to smart partnership here, you go and tell a Zimbabwean, an intellectual for that matter, about the need for social dialogue. He says, what are you talking about, man? In our case, we have the NECF. I've heard the guy 2 weeks ago who says, you have been talking about NECF for a long time. We don't know what this thing is achieving. That is from there. So it's not really about being highly educated. It's about being able to be convinced. And you must have time to explain to the people to buy into that process. It means co-ownership for the common good.
Yes.
If you want to go it alone, I'm assuring you, Professor, you won't get there because lions are there. But if you want us to do it together, we must walk slowly, nicely together and achieve our goals. That's one thing that I think is very, very important, and that would be the missing link. Why year after year we may not be able to actually have a physical touch of results of what we can achieve through national visions. And I always say, Botswana, my neighbor, it's not that I love you, but...
I didn't know that.
Yeah. I wanted to say, the way they crafted, when we made some thorough study and follow-ups as to how they did it, they went to the communities, identified community priorities, which vary from one area to the other, short and tall, highly educated, and maybe less educated, but all of them, they appreciated. We are all civilized to be able to appreciate what is good for the communities. And that's how they went for it. If you are to fail, my sister in Botswana, you have published all the material, we have read through all the material. One day you choose to say it is for the elite, then you are going to fail.
Yes.
Because that vision is kaput, is useless. So in my view, again, we go back to the drawing board and say, let's do it, all of us together. The good runners and the slow runners, let's all work together and achieve our goal. That's what I wanted to really say.
So then if we're saying that the government, as any government in any country, runs as a government, right? It's a one perspective, there is multiple, but vision is governed from many perspectives at the same time. That's what it is.
There's one thing very important about the role of government.
Right?
Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, I'm a trade unionist, and I said I don't want to be diluted into anything else. For the moment, I'm now 62 years from 1972. I decided I want to remain in labor. I don't know whether I'm going to deliver. There is something very, very important for the government. All the legs of the nation must be recognized and appreciated.
Yes.
The governments collect tax from everyone else. Therefore, the resources are with the government. A vision requires resources.
Yes.
for it to work.
What for?
The outreach programs to go to various communities, you pay money, whether it's rands or Namibian dollars or we in our case all dollars and all currencies. It all is coming from the common pool, which is the government. Therefore, the role of government is very essential and strategic. But I am saying, let it not be assumed that he who pays the piper shall only call the tune. That's a different thing altogether.
Yes.
If government has got the money through taxation, which I believe is a collective amount from where I contribute as a taxpayer, it is there for the will of the people. Therefore, it must be plowed back to the people by way of appreciating other players, trade unions, the media, like Andrew is there, even opposition parties, they have a role to play in driving a vision. But of course, very fundamental at the end of the day is, if we are all singing God Save the Queen, that means we are loyal to one national flag. If we are saying we are SADC, we are loyal to the SADC concept that brings us together. If we are talking of the AU, we are all loyal to the concept of Pan-Africanism. The discord that comes in is when Muzite, my brother here, now says, hang on, Sindog, you are too tall for my liking, therefore I don't need you in my vision. It's not yours. It's ours. It's our collective vision. We have had situations where intellectuals come and say, I don't think these guys are qualified to talk about it. We have come to situations where other people out of inferiority complex say, I think this is for these guys who wear neck and tie because they think they know better. At the end of the day, when they meet at their level, they say, let's just wait and see if ever they'll be able to get there. Those who know Shona, those who know my language Shona, they say, Zanontega Agasia Jiramai, Mumases. That means if you go it alone, when you get scared there, you may end up even getting stripped naked, leaving everything there and running for your life, and then you are eaten naked. Thank you very much.
I suppose John and Ashok need to
Michaela, I think that's very well made. All those points that Zindogo makes. No, didn't know I was here. I didn't know he was.
I joined.
The point is, we're talking of a ship of state in whatever form you want to talk about it. That's the people. Every country needs its own vision. It needs to understand what its people need and where the country is going, what the people want, where they're aiming for, and how it will be best for them in their environment and in the world. We can't dictate to them. We can't have a council sitting in London and saying, you chaps down there doing it wrong. You should do it like these people. But we can act as a conduit to help and advise where necessary, where requested, and where it will be useful. Because quite often, from a different vantage point, you see something that looks strange. But you can't go in and say you're doing it wrong. There may be a good reason that they're doing it that way. Maybe a very good reason. You may be able to draw their attention to it. I've got lots of analogies, as you know, but one of the analogies is we can't all get onto the same freeway. We've all got different kinds of cars and practices and rules and regulations. You can't all just get on and all go at the same speed. It doesn't work. But we must be aware of what's going on all around us. And CPTM, to a large degree, can represent a conduit, an informal, non-formal, but a very strong conduit for people to link and say, how do you do it there? Why do you, we can't do it that way. This is the reason. Oh, okay. That's our greatest strength, I think. Thank you.
Violet from the mountain.
So it's not your capitalist mode of production.
Thank you very much. I'm Mampupan Maheta from Lesotho. I just want to, I'm from the hub
in the
Prime Minister's office. I just want to add on how nations can succeed.
In the mountains.
In the mountains. Looking at the national visions. We all have national visions, and in order to implement them, we also have the strategic plans. And besides that, we are saying, instead of, in addition to the national strategic plans, we have to have the district operational plans, which emanate directly from the district, looking at the vision, looking at the central strategic plan. The district itself should produce its own operational plan based on the most required needs in that particular district. We have a pilot area where there is the operational plan, and the implementation process is already going on. And since the implementation was on the needs of the people within that particular district, the operations are going so smooth. And also the incorporation of the local government structures makes implementation easier. When I'm talking about the local government structures, there are also the members of parliament within the particular areas. They are also included in the implementation, so that after the experts leave the area, the local government structures and the MPs can look after the activities that have been implemented. So now Lesotho is going to, together with the Department of Planning, the Minister of Planning is now the ministry, together with the Minister of Planning, is going to do the operational plans with the people within each district, so that whatever the implementation is done in each district is based on the priority of that particular district. So we realized that even during the implementation process, there is a need for monitoring and evaluation. And in the first district, which we did the operational plan in Culture's Neck, there is already in place the monitoring and evaluation team, which quarterly goes back into the area based on the quarterly plan that was done by the experts to check on the ground whether what was planned has been implemented. And now we held on another.
The vision is vision to.
We have in Lesotho, we have Vision 2020, and again we held a dialogue in 2006, but I don't need some questions on why there was that implementation didn't start immediately. But now that we are implementing, there is implementation on the recommendations that were done on that dialogue. The authorities within the
Who is implementing now?
The implementers are the authorities within the experts and the community members. So even the monitoring and evaluation is composed of the authorities within each district. When I'm talking about the authorities, I'm talking about the community councillors, the MPs, the representatives from the heads of department within the district, the chiefs, all the authorities within each district, plus representatives from the heads of department form the monitoring and evaluation team. and they are the ones that follow up on the activities that were implemented based on the operational plan that was done. So what I was recommending from the community development point of view was that we have to make sure that each and every time we involve the community members, there is no way there's going to be implementation unless the community members or the people within that particular district can identify from the vision their priority areas, because districts differ. Each district has its own priorities. So based on the priority of that particular district, implementation has to follow that. So, and also the involvement of the local government structures is very important, because they are the overseers on the development in the district. So they have to be involved. They have to be part of whatever is happening within each district. Okay, I was talking.
But I want to ask you something. Is because we've been talking before, they don't know. You have a very strong, networks, which is something you didn't say. There are smart partnership type of links of various types who go straight to the community, not in the government. That's one. If you say smart partnership in Lesotho, you talk about some extraordinary interaction, which is only in Lesotho, between various links, smart partners links. And the structure that you talked about and the format is national planning and all the government, which is nothing different from probably any other country. So what is different is this very specific Basotho networks, which work alongside the structure that you mentioned, because otherwise we give them the impression it's something new. But in each country there are similar structures like you have, like you mentioned. So what is unique about it are these Basotho networks. So we don't know why these Basotho networks are so these cooperative, because when we were there in Macero for the dialogue, all of us who were there, we talked about groups of people from various villages who contributed and did all sorts of things for the dialogue. There were links, networks, which have nothing to do with actually, not the government, but the structures of the governance. And that's the reason why even the structure in the government probably worked, because they use this very. So talk about that, because you studied that, this cooperative spirit.
Okay, Michael. Yes, in Lesotho we have specialized links. We have about 8 links. We have governance and politics, which is composed of the government, representatives from the government, and representatives from the political side. We have business link, who are the business community. We have the labor link, who are the workers from government, workers from outside government. We have a media link, which is composed of the representatives of the media houses. We have arts and culture link, which is composed of the artists. We have social issues, which is focusing more on HIV and AIDS and other issues, social issues, which these other links are not addressing. If you can remember that social issues link was developed by the first ladies, if you can remember that, so that they can address the HIV and AIDS disease in different countries. So we have that link. We also have academia. Academia is composed of representatives from different institutions in the country. So when we go out in the districts, there are also specialized links committees within each district, which we use to coordinate the smart partnership activities. And they are the ones that will coordinate whatever activities are happening, the smart partnership activities that are happening within each district. But since the committees within the districts, most of them are composed of government employees in some districts, but in some districts are composed of totally private people. So in those districts that are composed by government people, we are trying to change that so that they are only private people within that.
Well, it's unique in Lesotho, actually, the visibility of those links. And probably we should participate in some of their vision. Would you want to, she mentioned political link, political advisor to Prime Minister. Would you want to mention something, Mr. Beren?
Not now, thank
You just voted. Okay, very good, very good. Okay.
But
No, just one other thing, because the same as in Lesotho, Mauritius, Jim, you could mention a little bit about the Mauritius 2020 after she finishes, yeah?
Okay.
Hold a second.
I came here to learn, not to teach.
No, you don't need to teach, just what happened when Manu did. Yeah, but let her finish that.
It was owned by the local people. My role was just to help advise because we'd done a project in this country. And they got together groups of all kinds of different people in the different areas, and they worked out schemes for them, and then they brought them together. And the great thing was that everybody got together in different kinds of groups, from the very top to the very bottom. And the highlight of it, right at the end, when they got the broad picture coming together, they had a special conference at the weekend where they got the young people, the students and the high school children, because they are the future, and it was very important to get their feelings of what they wanted for the country.
But what was extraordinary was that the various groups that came up with various reports, isn't it, Joe? They had to present to the young groups to see if they understand and if they relate to what they think. And that was quite an extraordinary dynamic, to the point that the youth took over, and actually the people in the government who were running that vision process felt so uncomfortable. They did everything they could to stop that discussion before it went too far. So I remember it was late night, and they had to switch off the light to stop the discussion.
Yes, I think the idea is
because
to bring...
Lesotho and small countries.
The idea is to bring the vision to be owned by the junior generation, because you have to pass it on, otherwise it's a useless exercise. So the involvement was capital.
Okay, the last example which I wanted to give was on the to show the activeness of the specialized links is in relation to the artists, art and culture link, and governance and politics, where they initiated for dialoguing, since there was a fight between the farmer artists in Lesotho, and there were a lot of killings among them in a particular district. And then there was that dialogue that was held. Relevant stakeholders were called, and then afterwards there were some suggestions to be done, like counseling sessions, which have already been done now, counseling sessions to the affected families. And there were also public gatherings for the community members, because normally there are followers of these artists. So there were public gatherings within that particular district, and also media sessions were held. Some of the artists were in the mines of the Republic of South Africa, and then the sessions, the meetings were held just to keep peace. So I was just showing that it was initiated, the activity was initiated by the Arts and Culture Link and Governments and Politics.
That was incredible.
So,
but one
now,
of the reasons why they were in trouble, isn't it? Is because, in fact, one of the reasons was because the choirs in Lesotho, Swaziland, etc., they are most formidable choirs, and we'll hear soon something like this. We all need to rehearse by Friday afternoon. But the choirs and the songs are not, they are not able to patent. Am I right? That was the underlying problem, yeah? To patent and more than that, a number of other things are still up if you can't patent, and they are being seen as being picked up by others. It's the same in Swaziland. We discussed in Swaziland about that point of time. And quite, you go ahead.
Yeah. When she talks about the patenting, nowadays there is law, there is a
the copyright.
There's a copyright.
He will. Dion won't exactly correct you. What is the law?
Copyright law for protecting the artists, because there was a lot of piracy on their products. So
I think we've got the point that the smart partners links in Lesotho are quite important. And these are networks, but the lot, yeah, Gideon and maybe Anta in Caribbean, you have something, because again there are small islands with different dynamics. I mean the Caribbean communication is quite, no, we have the Caribbean, we have Caribbean.
Smart partners, I think smart partners, it's excellent the Prime Minister said it very well, President, sorry, said it very well, that we seem to copy or we see what other people have done, that Botswana has done something, then we also do that. So that to say that for Lesotho, we had our dialogue first before they had their dialogue. So they came to us. All those links they're talking about, they copied from us, but they didn't pay us. So what I would say is the same links. I'm not going to go through the links yet, but I can just go on what we're developing the vision, which is called NDS, National Development Strategy. That's what we call it. I was one of the people who was chairing the infrastructure. It was divided into a lot of groups: education, infrastructure, a lot of areas, science and so on. So when it was formed, it was the participation. Everybody was participating, so that there were a lot of contributions that went there. And then the organization that for doing these things, at times you need government to help with financing. So the financing was from through government through the UNDP, who assisted us to formulate our strategy. So I think now we're left with only 9 years. So what is happening now? We're going to talk about it maybe more tomorrow in our session on what we're doing. So what actually is happening is that we're going to be looking at what we have done. The report is a process that's going on now. What we have done, and then what needs to be done, and then what were the things that were omitted. For example, I was a chairperson for the infrastructure. Things like internet were not even there around the camp, but now they're here. So how are we going to do those things? So what we're doing, what John said is that we have to look outside the box when creating these things. I think we did that. But we have to live both inside the box and outside the box. Inside the box is what we're actually doing now. Inside, when we are now inside the box, what we do simple arithmetic. We add things that were omitted. We subtract what is not working. We also divide certain things that let's divide these and then do them separately so that we can have better results. And those that are doing very well, we multiply. So that's what we're doing in the process. Even in our dialogues that we have now, our dialogue is divided into regions. We dialogue in the regions, and then from the region we have national dialogue. Even there, our reports that we have for the national dialogue, and I'm happy that we have a lot of support from the region. Namibia normally come there in our national dialogues. Botswana, even Lesotho, they do come there. So I like the support that we are having. So even there, the way we write our reports is also of a similar nature, because each table we say to people, what is it that we are doing right, so that we continue doing it. And then what can we add? What is it that the country is not doing? Then we start doing it. And what is it that we are doing wrong? So that's how we even do our dialogue, so that we follow the arithmetic, where we add, we subtract, we divide, and multiply. So we'll talk more about this tomorrow.
Okay. Ante, let's hear a Caribbean voice. We haven't heard yet, in addition to Len. Just say a few things. In Barbados, they've done a you've done very earlier on in Barbados. You had a particular way of bringing together for the social contract, for instance. Yeah, that's one. Is that still maintained? Because in fact, it's quoted everywhere at the national level. No?
Yeah, it was a good concept, but recently it started unraveling. With all the dynamics and so on. So some of the partners have opted out of that.
The business, the unions.
Well, one of the unions came out only 2 months ago. So that is not working as good as it was before.
I mean, do you know, because I think Isidore, you wanted to know about social contract.
It was,
Barbados.
yeah, it was a grouping, well, informal between the government and the social partners, the unions, the industry, the what do we call it now? With the unions, one is government, the other social partners. But we have more than one union in Barbados.
Yeah.
And the biggest union, in fact, the oldest union is the one that came out recently out of it. So they're trying to woo them back in, but I don't think it is working right now.
But what
But
was
the
the idea?
others are still going ahead.
What
with
was the idea?
contract.
What was the idea?
It really was about working together in the best interest of the country. So rather than, and it was an informal grouping too. I mean, it wasn't formalized with a contract and so, but what they did was they developed protocols against which they would function and operate. They had reached Protocol 6. But then
So they were signing for 5 years
Yes,
or
they-
8 years.
Yes.
They were agreeing.
It was going for 10 years. It was going maybe as much as 15 years. Yeah. And the idea was that they would get together to try to resolve issues, hear each other, get each other's opinion to work in the best interest of the country. But like I said, it started unraveling recently, so I have to wait and see how that will progress. unions. We have, in terms of labor, we have, like I said, it's more than one trade union. We have like the teachers, we had one for safe public service, one for the other workers. The teachers have their own union. And they have come together to form a coalition. And then one of those unions fell out of the coalition. So, and then came out of the social partnership as well.
So it wasn't a smart partnership, right?
It's a very smart.
It wasn't very smart.
I've got a question, Miela.
You go ahead.
Maybe we can be helped. I think my colleagues from Zimbabwe, we share this same question. We are caught up in a situation where social dialogue, is it supposed to be a statutory requirement or an informal way of doing things leading towards statutory results? We have the NECF, Chief Secretary Deputy. We have the NECF in Zimbabwe, which was blamed by some other guys as a talk show. And I like talk shows because they help other people to understand things from various angles. And there's nothing wrong with a talk show. This think tanking session in which we are is actually another talk show. But it's entirely up to you to pick a leaf out of it. In Zimbabwe, we coined what we called then TNF. Because Labour, my fellow countrymen, were busy saying it's a waste of time to go to the NECF because we don't see results coming out of the NECF.
NECF is National Economic
Right.
Consultative Forum.
So we coined way back, even Morgan Tsvangirai, who was then Secretary General of the ZCT, and then Minister for Labour, said, let's agree on what we call tripartite negotiating forum to concretize issues to lead towards results and legislate if ever we need to legislate. But the latest is that I've heard from the grapevine is that they want to make an act of parliament to make the TNF a statutory body. In my way of thinking, dialogues are supposed to be informal, accommodative, with no rules of wear a straight jacket or neck and tie or wear, you see, or wear a sleeve tight. That's my view, but we are there. So maybe from Barbados, we could pick a leaf.
Yeah, that's
Now that others have opted out of the arrangement, yeah, one party has opted out of the arrangement because it was a voluntary process, was it? Yeah. My question now is, would you have used the law to say thou shalt not go up? Because dialogues are led like in a church. We just agree we are singing from the same hymn book. No discord. If we are saying God is the Lord, then we all say God is the Lord. But what I see now and the experience back home is that people want a statutory instrument to say thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that. In my view, that kills social dialogue.
But the partnership is still very much informal. What they do is, well, it is supposed to be the avenue, yes, to discuss issues, social, economic, to assist the government in, well, formalizing policies in terms of its social programs, budgets, what, you know, the various partners are looking for, say, every year when they're developing the budget. And what they do is, at the end of those discussions, they would sign what they would call a protocol, which would guide the discussions. but it's still very informal, and I don't think it will ever be formalized in that sense.
What is beyond the relationship between constitution as a super legal framework for a country and the national vision? Is
So,
that,
are you asking me?
yeah, because a constitution is a formal super ongoing being there, and a vision has as a framework. The constitution itself evolves. I'm getting into trouble now when I look at this and others. But I'm trying to say, when we said a legal or a voluntary framework, yeah?
Okay, I
Go
just
ahead.
want to draw your
Go.
attention to
Go.
the time.
Yeah.
GMT
Fine.
here.
Yeah, we will finish.
Can I just
Yeah.
very briefly? I'm a lawyer, very much a retired judge of the High Court, and I've had
We are very happy.
23 wonderful years on the bench. And in many of the cases which came before me, I helped the parties to mediate a settlement. And that's really what my dear friend Isidore is talking about. It's that kind of mediation, that kind of informal process to negotiate a settlement which is going to be acceptable to both sides. It's a win-win situation all the way. There's no party that wins and no party that loses, which of course does happen in litigation. It happens in arbitrations, because arbitration is just another form of litigation, which sometimes leads to appeals and this and that and the other thing. That's one of the reasons why, since I retired as a judge, I've made myself available as a mediator and have managed to do 1 or 2 mediations with success. Simply because you try to get the parties together, and it's almost as if you're trying to get them to develop a memorandum of understanding, an MOU. You know, we all use this term. I know it's a bit of a cliche, but an MOU is an extremely important instrument, because this is where the parties say, well, this is what we agree on, we have an understanding, and this is what we are striving to achieve. And I think that is really what it's all about.
Maybe we should call it differently, because it has such a bad reputation.
Yes. So I really do believe that when I hear about Barbados, and I know is Basil Springer from Barbados as well. I read his weekly contributions and with great interest, because there is a person who is really striving to achieve a memorandum of understanding for the Caribbean. And I don't think it's something you must be too concerned about. And I'm not comparing constitutions. I've been very involved with constitutions and with the Swazi constitution. I know that at this stage the Swazi constitution is being placed under a fair amount of pressure as well, because of the absolute monarchy as opposed to the democratic principles in that constitution. It's not easy, and I would very much like to get the parties together again, just to make sure that they understand that they are striving for the same thing.
When you say absolute, is it a traditional?
Yeah, well, it is. It's the only last traditional or customary absolute monarchy in Africa, which makes Swaziland a totally different kind of country as far as its government is concerned. But they're wonderful people.
No, but they have wonderful smart partnership dialogue.
That's right. That's right. And that's when I became involved with CPTM. Was in Ezulwini in Swaziland in 2003, and I think again in 2004 there was a follow-up. Absolutely wonderful. But what we need is for the parties to get together to try and achieve that memorandum of understanding, to try and achieve some form of agreement which is going to be acceptable to all parties.
Actually, no, thank you, Dion. In addition to just because we need to stop, there are things both in relation to a constitution and issues related to vision. But the main thing we haven't quite discussed, with the exception of Lesotho a little bit, was about how traditional way of doing things, the way Van Isidore was talking about, is embedded in whatever MOUs, constitution, vision processes So maybe DPN will reflect and come to that. You have something to tell us. The tradition in Namibia, never mind tradition in Lesotho.
I understand the question to mean that
Are they
the
embedded?
constitution and the vision.
Uh-huh. And the
Yeah.
tradition.
Now, in our case, we have got what you call a mixed type of tradition. And that independence, we accepted that no tradition should be prevail beyond the national issues. We agreed even to adopt the language, English language as the national language, because everybody wanted theirs to be adopted.